And there's like a lot of changes since we haven't been doing release for 2 weeks. Mostly there's tons of refactoring in the Aptos framework. So pay attention to those, like your previous script. If you're republishing all kinds of modules, like for every Devnet release, you might need to take a look and rewrite some of the stuff. On the framework side, on-chain governance and votings are enabled, which is super exciting. It's still experimental, and teams can start using voting to build their own governance for the protocol. So we would love to hear your feedback. So take a look at our governance, on-chain governance Move module, and let us know what you think. On Move side, also, all the modules are now follow the lowercase and safe case naming conventions. Community modules would need to be updated if you rely on the Aptos framework or standard library modules. Please update your CLI version as well to be compatible with last week's release of all those changes. And also on Move side, we migrated away from Oscar strings to UTF-8. Framework, we also added the semi-fungible token support by introducing the serial number and token coin swap contract. Stay sync, there's some small improvements to reduce unnecessary logs and expand metrics tracking. So if you load your metrics now and then see the logs, it might be a little different now. On the execution, we also have some of the performance improvements. And then there's a new version of Aptos CLI. We are starting to follow some release schedule, and then we will publish our release strategies very soon for Devnet, main branch, and different branch. I know people are starting to have confusions on, okay, now my CLI doesn't compatible with Devnet. The docs also outdated. The docs on talks about the mainnet. So hopefully we will have a better strategies and documentation around those things on which version, which doc, which links to follow if you're on different developing environment. Super great feature also added to the CLI. There's now a command to allow you to run local testnet with Aptos node run local testnet. Super simple command. You will very quickly spin up a node or a local testnet to help you with your development. So try it out and let us know how you like it. There's now also, when you init the CLI, there's a global config so that whenever which direction you're working on, the CLI will always work. So this is really amazing and lots of the user experience improvements. Cool. And hopefully we will have another Devnet release this week. We are observing some of the CPU. You run the full nodes, you might observing the memory leaks like starting build up, and then the node will restart once for a while because out of the memory issue. The teams are currently working on this, and hopefully we will release a hotfix soon. And we might end up with an early release because of all the changes happening in this space. So stay tuned. We will publish all the announcements and schedules in our channel as always.
Amazing. Additionally, we are wrapping up IRONGREY, the second incentivized testnet has come to a close last week. Thank you and congratulations to everyone who participated. We had over 200 people who were actually selected for the participation process, running nodes globally across many countries. This allowed us to collect a lot of data on latencies to test and modify the way that we do on-chain for each round, but also understand how latency affects your rates, how it affects even vote timeouts. So thank you very much. And I know that there is some concern around, especially during load testing, understand we are going to be looking at the data throughout the whole week. And we definitely want to make sure that we reward people who participated and who really spent a lot of the time and money running during IT2. So don't worry, even though the leaderboard right now, I think is still updated, even though people are taking their notes offline, we did take a snapshot as of Thursday or Friday, and we are looking really in depth at different snapshots of leaderboard throughout the week to really see how various fixes that the development team put out affected the scoring, as well as some of the changes people have made locally to the configuration setting we asked for timeouts or to bandwidth, etc. So we will be announcing more on that relatively soon. Is there anything else anyone want to add about IT2?
I would like to call out the efforts we did. We did lots of operation together with this more than 200 community node operators, which is really amazing. We smoothly released 4 software upgrades during this 10-day period of time. And then we did another config update without updating the software. And then this entire time, our network was running no issue, smooth as butter. And then we try to, like Max mentioned, we try to throw tons of transactions through our network, and they process with no issue at all. We barely see any CPU memory consumptions, but obviously people see a lot of network traffic, which helps us identify where is our hot resource utilizations on our stacks, where is our improvement opportunity. So thank you so much. We really enjoyed this past 10 days of a testing period. We learned a ton, and then hopefully we will share with you with more the details, more learnings, more of our observations, and then take all this into the feedbacks of making next AIT much better.
Yeah, just a quick call out there for those that actually participated in AIT2. There's a issues board where you can post your experiences there. We'd love to get more feedback. There was at least one individual that actually gave a really thorough write-up of their experience on AIT2, and we'd love to get more in that space just so that we can better appreciate some of the things that we should expect going into mainnet. And as Sherry called out, bandwidth was actually one of the really big topics. We were actually floored at how much bandwidth was required to maintain the network. And so we're definitely going to be doubling down on just the data transportation costs, compression, other types of techniques to reduce the overheads there coming into AIT3. And so lots of good stuff as we do the analysis throughout the week to share with you folks in the next Move Monday.
You should expect to receive a survey, I think sometime this week. The team's still trying to flash some details on the detailed question. We also really would appreciate if you share your cloud billings cost breakdown with us. So just file the GitHub issue on the AIT2 repo and then attach with your cost. We would love to see how much it actually costs right now and where is the really the areas we should improve and focus. So you help us, we will help you save money in the future.
Fantastic.
Win-win.
There you go. Fantastic. So as we are kind of going through things that we want to talk about, I want to remind that if you have any questions, you can put them into comments in Twitch or into our Move language channel on Aptos for Move specific questions. But I highly recommend putting them into Twitch. For long-form discussion, things like standards, I do want to call out that we do have a forum.aptoslabs.com. It's a great place to discuss the wallet standards, the NFT standards. There are some exciting discussions going on there, and I highly recommend any long discussions to move on over there.
Quick calls I want to make is last week we proposed that we might be able to actually go through our roadmaps and mainnets. Unfortunately, we were busy working on DevNet and testnet, so we didn't get a chance to actually finalize those details. The plan is to actually have that in the upcoming week. So please tune in next week and we'll call that out at the end of the broadcast as well. And I'm sure many of you actually probably saw the really exciting news about our Series A round this morning, or wherever that time was in your local time zone. From here, we're primarily engineering, so we don't have much context on that, so please don't ask questions. I will say one thing with absolute certainty, that we've been absolutely blessed that we have a very strong business team and CTO that have taken on the bulk of the work to get us through this funding round so that we as engineers can focus really on getting this amazing blockchain out to you folks. And if you ask any questions, I will repeat that exact sentiment each time.
Fantastic.
And then I guess with that, we are ready to move on to Q&A. And so we've got a whole bunch of stuff from folks over the past 24 or 36 hours. But if we've got anything live, we can go to that first.
Yeah. So someone is asking about Ethereum Layer 2s. How do you think that Ethereum Layer 2s work with the ecosystem as a whole? And kind of, I guess, will they eat the world?
I think it's saying, well, each layer two blockchains consume all of the blockchains.
Yeah. Oh, I'll take a crack at that. So, great, thanks for the question. I mean, I think, the layer 2 technology is something that especially makes sense for Ethereum, given the state of where it is, and its layer is a kind of a settlements layer. Of course, in Vitalik's vision he gave last week at Paris, we kind of solidified and moved towards how sharding is going to be a big part of the Ethereum future. I think, in general, we believe that our network will be extremely performant from a layer 1 perspective. That being said, there will be all the specialized cases in which layer 2 solutions based on rollups, either optimistic rollups, ZK-based rollups, will be providing value in certain types of applications in certain types of areas in the future. So we don't have more to share there. We've been doing a little bit of research. We've been having a lot of fun exploring some different options with different kinds of partnerships in that space. But once we do have more information, we'll be happy to share that with you in the future.
Fantastic. Someone else asks, are we still hiring for production engineer roles?
Yes, we do. Please apply.
Perfect. Let's see. Are you guys taking questions? We are. Let's see. There is a question around token distribution. I don't know if we want to talk about that or want to save that for our tokenomics paper.
I think, yeah, the answer will be tokenomics paper coming soon. And I think we'll have a very good breakdown of the token distributions. And I think that you'll hopefully be very excited about the way we thought through that process.
Someone wants to in regards to AIT2 participation, if you were running well at some point during last week, don't worry, we will take a look at it. And we will take the full performance across the AIT2 into consideration.
Also, to give you guys a little insight, Aptos as our team, we also run multiple nodes. Some of our nodes in Asia, in Singapore, in Korea, in Brazil, in Europe, in US, and we do observe our nodes performance across all the regions in the world. And I do absolutely upgrade my nodes across every individual releases as well. That's our kind of a baseline we use to make sure we are understanding what's the performance, what could be the downsides of every node. Not only you guys are running in India or all those rare regions, we are running our nodes in those regions as well. So we will make sure we reward people fair and then make sure people are getting the their efforts and their contributions really appreciated during this process.
The official release date is coming in Q3. I want a hoodie with your logo on it. Can you give it to me? No, we can't. Maybe a merch shop is in the future. I think one of the main reasons we can't is we don't actually, I think, have a hoodie with our logo on it. But maybe we should. So that's a fantastic suggestion that I will definitely ask the people who work on Swag here to take a look. Will disk space be a problem with such high TPS?
Well, yes, this is physics, right? But when there's more data you wanted to store, there's a bigger disk space, but transactions you wanted to preserve versus how much we wanted to provide the options for people who are willing to spend a lot more monies on of different will be able to choose based on their requirements and demand.
Yeah, I think this ties back into some of the fun stuff that happened in AIT2, where we actually had an active pruning system that I think kept about a day's worth of transactions on the node. As a result, nodes that got taken offline for more than 24 hours were unable to synchronize because they were trying to just follow transactions. Fortunately, we engineered a snapshot-based synchronization primitive, which allowed folks that turned on that experimental feature to actually quickly catch up with the chain and resume. And so while we didn't intend that to be one of the metrics for AIT2 success, it turned out to be. We're going to double down on those efforts coming into AIT3. We're really trying to understand and help express to the community the trade-offs in the space of data retention versus pruning strategies. Now, moving, as Sherry said, as we move on, track of the accounts or the types of transactions or what have not that you're interested in tracking without having to keep a history of the entire blockchain.
Fantastic. What is the best place to find the RPC specs?
We do have the REST API RPC specs as an open API spec that is on our full node endpoint, as well as it's linked to in the documentation. We're currently working on making an updated version that is more matching what the APIs actually are, better examples.
And if you want to take a look at one, I believe it's the full node at Devnet at aptos.com/spec.html. That's the actual open API running on every single node. And you can run one locally to see the most up-to-date as well. So here's an interesting question. Do transactions collide when writing to multiple tables stored as different fields in the same resource?
Different fields in the same resource. Well, collision is an interesting word here, in that if these are two different transactions with two different sequence numbers are coming from different users, what you'd imagine you'd see is, unless you have preconditions and postconditions, that the ordering would dictate the outcome of the transaction operations. Now, in terms of block STM, if they're talking to the exact same key/value in the table itself, that would result in a conflict. So they would have to be explicitly sequentialized.
What if?
I believe that's Alex's question. Do you want it to just talk right now?
Yeah. Table A, table B, different fields in the same resource. Someone modifies an entry in table B in one transaction. Someone modifies an entry in table B in a different transaction. Can block STM execute those in parallel?
Are they two different keys?
Yeah, because they're both different tables.
Yeah, then there'd be no issue.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so just to be clear, a table resource is not the same thing as the table keys that are also distinct resources. So the values in tables are distinct resources as well. So both of those give you layers of parallelization.
Okay. And then if this results in a modification to the length of the table, where, like, for example, adding to a table, if two transactions try to add entries, will those collide, since that requires modifying the length field?
So that's something that we're very excited to share some early updates, as we've been, a handful of our research team has been exploring aggregators. And so this allows you to do delta operations on simple integers such as table lengths. And so we can actually go and say we have add one to the table length from multiple different transactions in the same block. Do that in parallel. At the end of the block, we'll actually aggregate those results together, the delta operations, and say, here's your new table length. And so that allows us to perform parallelization on a single field within inside of a resource. Okay. Of course, it's extremely limited to just integers for now, but something that we're going to be exploring for generalization purposes.
How can non-technical people get involved more? I think that's a great question. James is our community manager here at Aptos Labs. He is available in Discord. You can check out a bunch of the resources in Discord or file a ticket inside Discord, and people will help you find something to contribute. But we are looking for contributions across a wide variety of non-technical pieces too. I think there was a memeathon recently, and we are working internally to develop better tooling for people who are non-technical to find kind of exactly what we are looking for a community to do. That'll be events in the future, things like documentation, article writing, etc. I can't really speak to the details, but we are working on that tooling and it is coming soon. But if you'd like to be involved ahead of time, please reach out to James. There's a ever-growing number, I believe, of movers who help our community in very many various ways. IT3 registration will start sooner than we expect, as always.
Yeah.
And it will be available to everyone. So, participation in IT1 and IT2 is not mandatory for participation in IT3, but we'll be releasing more details on what IT3 will, how IT3 will look and what the selection process is going to look like relatively soon. IT3 is our last one before mainnet launch, and IT4 is coming at some point as well. But as we get from IT1 to IT2, IT2 resembled our production network much more. And so as we go through these device testnets, as we get closer to mainnet, we do eventually want the last device testnet to more or less be a reflection of exactly what mainnet will be. And hopefully it'll be a smooth transition from one to the next.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I believe next week we should be able to give most of the details leading up to our mainnet launch. So patience, please. We promise good and exciting news is coming.
Soon.
Soon. Another fantastic question.
Go ahead.
Can you comment on best practices for having a use plus capability paradigm as a circumvention for friend dependencies?
I can say something about this. So I think that might be possible.
Multiple models try to declare each other as friends. It introduces a dependency cycle. And one alternative is to simply have them use each other with public functions that also require capabilities, so as to prohibit external actors from calling public functions. I was wondering if you could comment on best practices for that. Anyone?
That sounds a bit nuanced. I'd love to see a diagram here to kind of just walk through it. We were actually having a little bit of fun, myself, having a little bit of fun this weekend thinking about how to do some performance optimizations around the Aptos coin and potentially having that stored within the account, but also recognizing the routing issues with coin not being able to know accounts and accounts already knows coin. And so the model that I was moving towards was kind of having another layer above that can know about both of them and they can have friends into that object. And so that's kind of the paradigm that feels the most accessible to me, if that makes sense.
Like an umbrella model that uses both.
Exactly.
Got it.
A router, if you will.
I think we were not able to hear Wolfgang, but maybe try again this time.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I think on Twitch you guys can hear me, but probably in the room you can't hear me. That is fine as long as you know when I'm talking. Yeah, so I just wanted to answer. Now you can hear me. Okay, cool. I just want to say one word about this capability versus friend thing. So definitely it's possible that in some use cases, you can use capability for something similar what you would use friend for. And actually together with phantom types, there's a very powerful design approach or so a move which is available using capability like, so we call it also witnesses sometimes, but that's probably a little bit too long here for this meeting, but I'm happy to say something more about this on Discord, no? But yeah, so basically the answer to that question is on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes you can do some security-oriented stuff which you want to protect something with the capability. Sometimes you can do it with the friend paradigm. Whatever fits best can work. And as I'm already talking, so I think there was another question about a comparison with SUI, I see. So I don't want to, go into that like comparison story, SUI versus Aptos versus move old or move new or whatever. So in fact, I can just say that much at this point of time. So SUI has changed, moved in very significant ways, which is totally their right to do. So because the move language is a generic language, it can be instantiated for a blockchain, and SUI is instantiating it, Aptos is instantiating it. SUI has changed the language very significantly. I don't know whether that will be successful. We have to take a look at it and wait for what comes out of this. But for example, in SUI, you don't have that concept of global resources anymore. You don't have borrow global anymore. So you have a really quite different programming model than in the original move. What is the more modern move or not? I wouldn't say that can be clearly said, because we are also evolving move here together with the move community. For example, SUI doesn't have tables, which is an important concept which we added to move for the applications we are seeing in the Aptos context. Yeah.
Awesome.
Just to call out, there's been a few questions lately on the topic of renting or written out. Use case example: a user purchases an item or mints that item. That we have not spent a lot of time really digging into to evaluate. So give us maybe the rest of the week, and maybe come back either in Discord or in Move Mondays to kind of give an update of how we're thinking about short-lived tokens.
Awesome. So are we going to get full Windows support?
Windows is the best operating system for hackers.
David is the only person in this room running Windows right now. Slightly my sense.
I hate to say it, but you're probably best off giving yourself a little bit of Windows, Linux, whatever they call it, WSL, I think it's called. And that's what I use for my developments. At some point in time, we'll definitely explore Windows, but the reality is for running services, even Macs aren't that great. You're probably going to go straight into Linux-based operating systems for your services. Some people might disagree, but Macs are they're very expensive. That's just
They're very expensive. And I will say this is the first Mac that actually I think is close to worth it. Are there any options for move native functions or non-colliding GUIDs, such as a version number or a similar serial counter?
We also have a GUID .move that may be useful, but I think Wolfgang.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. So like you should open issues for this kind of thing, and then we can maybe access native functions.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's a great idea. Yeah.
File issue first.
I did.
Oh no! Apparently, there's an issue. Okay.
I got updated.
I think on a similar actual question, the aggregator that David was talking about, can this also be reused to establish non-colliding or sequentially numbered GUIDs?
Apply to the GUID module you mentioned. If people are constantly querying GUIDs.
So the way GUID works is it provides income. It does a write and then read, or read then write.
Right.
Whereas the way the aggregator is just writes. It's delta operations, whereas you're looking for.
Because so GUID is colliding.
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah. So the native function appears to be the
native function. I would definitely make the issue. I think another option might be just to say block STM friendly GUID that supports multiple distinct resources of the GUID generator.
So even when transactions are executing in parallel and block STM, they can still be assigned sequential IDs without having to replay.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily be wait, but there's a lot to say there. If you're using the GUID thing, they'd all be sequential, but then you'd also lose your parallelism.
Mm-hmm.
If you went with a secondary GUID generator that was parallel aware, then they would be sequential inside of their own generator, but not across the generators, because each generator would be namespaced differently.
Right, yeah, that would work, okay.
Yeah. Just as a move fast solution.
Sergey says hello to see you. I'm very glad to see everyone. It's nice to see you back as well, Sergey. Sweet. So we have, I think that goes through all of the questions and switch so far. We have a bunch that were submitted to our Typeform.
I actually went through most of them already.
We've gone through most of the ones in our Typeform.
Yes, can always double check if there's any ones that we want to go through. Avery, if you want to give an overview of consensus, feel free. That's always a common. Happy to receive this question.
We can talk about. I mean, so it would take a while and probably go through the full length of consensus, but you can. We have a technical paper called DMBFTV4, which describes the current consensus protocol and the upgrades from like the hot stuff that we've been working on for the last 3+ years. We also, if you can see to our code base, we've been working on something called the Quorum Store, which is kind of a next generation iteration on top of that, where we decouple the transaction dissemination from the consensus protocol itself. So I would encourage you to take a look at both of those things, either the code for the more recent work that we're doing, as well as the BFTV4 paper. And if you want to look at kind of where the direction of our research is headed, our amazing researchers, Sash and Roddy, and others have been working on a whole line of protocols around DAG-based implementations that kind of span back from Narwhal and Tusk to Bullshark to even some of their work around all you need is DAG. So yeah, I would encourage you to read those publications as well.
There was a question about how one might append a U64 to a string. As you may tell by our libraries, we don't currently support anything to strings, so that would have to be a operation that you'd have to explicitly implement, and then you can use, I believe there's an append function for the string, so then you can append a string to a string.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to add to the strings thing. I think we will very likely pressing in the direction of having some format function also in order to solve some of these conversion problems, because right now it's really very, very basic what we have in strings, but also keep in mind that strings aren't really part of the language since a very long time. So we just at the start with it now. So the ASCII type, which was there before, or the ASCII module, was really a hack, and now we have UTF-8 strings, and now we can build up more support for those string types like people are used to from all languages.
Question about upgradable contracts on Move. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Upgradable what? I'm sorry, I haven't seen that question.
Tools on Move.
Upgradable contracts, or upgradable code. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, this one we definitely have a solution which we are currently implementing, which will allow you to upgrade code using various policies, starting from you can just upgrade arbitrarily, but then it's totally on your own. You're on your own, or upgrade in a downwards compatible way, which will check for you, which is probably a requirement for everybody who want to consume someone else's code on the network. This compatibility check is a requirement for them to use it. And up to the point that what we have right now, which basically immutable, you can't upgrade. So those policies for upgrading your code will be flexible and configurable before we hit mainnet.
That I know there's a lot of hungry people out there looking forward to upgradability of new contracts. There's another question on, are there any examples of Aptos smart contracts anywhere? If you head in over to our GitHub repo, you can go to the Aptos Move directory /Move examples. You can see a handful there. And I think we are long overdue for a awesome Aptos file that kind of calls out the community and enables you folks to kind of coordinate there. So we'll probably jump onto that one maybe this week if we get some bandwidth, but I'd love to actually have the community start to share and have like a centralized way of actually aggregating those together. Plus, I hate to take away the thunder from the community portal that we're also building out to solve that. And maybe Max can share a little bit of details on the timeline for that, or maybe I'm putting my foot in his mouth.
Yeah, put me down. Yeah, there's a lot we want to work on. We're talking about future roadmaps now. Obviously, the path to mainnet is fairly settled, and there is a lot to do before then. But we are talking about things after mainnet to, I think that the easiest way right now, but we can talk more about next week because we are finalizing some things. But I think the easiest thing to say is if you have suggestions or if you have thoughts or concerns, go to the forum, you can add a suggestion, and we'll definitely take a look at it. But we can talk a little more on that next week.
Awesome.
What is the meaning of an entry function in Move?
So it'll
Yeah,
probably
yeah. Oh, sorry. I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's already mentioned here on the chat also. This entry function is just a syntactic change. So public script in this braces is replaced by a public entry. That's all. So it's otherwise exactly the same. So if you want to know why, this notion of a script is a little bit confusing here, because the script is something which you send to the blockchain to execute. And that's really not what that is any longer. The public script function in a module is really not a script in the sense. So it's a function of a module. And that let the Move maintainers make that decision to make this small syntactic change and rename it so it makes more sense and is more logical.
So there's many questions about just how to get started. I would definitely recommend that you head over to aptos.dev. That's https://aptos.dev. And you'll learn a lot there. And once you're comfortable with some of the primitives there, head over to Discord and join the gang and ask some deep questions, and we'll be happy to get engaged.
Sweet.
Let's see. So there's also some questions about NFTs on Aptos. That's a ever exciting topic. First thing I would definitely recommend is we have a tutorial called My First NFT that kind of goes over the current mindset that we have for the token standard. We are actively working on a revised token standard that tries to embrace more for Web3 to enable more on-chain, give more power to the creators. That will be available hopefully pretty soon. With that, we're also looking for community feedback on exactly what would be useful for with inside of such a token standard. And you can see where you guys request honestly 24 hours with regard to these ephemeral tokens. So love to get more of this type of stuff, since it really helps us build and help define these things. And honestly, it'd be great to actually have the community jump in and work with us in this space.
Absolutely. There is another question of sometimes if hosts where the Intel processors are really old, the validator does not want to be installed.
That's why in our hardware requirements, we recommend people to use newer generation. While it's almost impossible for us to test our software on all type of CPU architecture, we can only make sure that it works with the most recent one, like the team use. We will publish probably there's a higher chance you will have issues. So please upgrade and make sure you are on.
Are there plans to integrate coverage testing support for the Aptos CLI?
So you submitted a couple bugs about this. It's not in the immediate plans, but in the event that gets some free time, I'll add it. But you did make a GitHub issue for it, and thank you for that. Right now, mostly focused on making sure that the compilation works correctly, and that because there's been a lot of questions, especially
or nail it down first? I don't know.
Yeah, there's also, maybe we can, so we've got more than Greg working on some of these doings, so we can always try to have other people explore that. The other thing that we're also exploring is 2 different types of test frameworks for Move. If you're familiar, like integrated unit tests within Move are really great for testing inside a small code bases. But as your application starts to sprawl, or you're interested about external operations, such as how does my transaction actually impact my smart contracts, or what if I want to do multiple operations over a longer period of time that's more complex. We have 2 models that we're building right now. One is the transactional testing model, and this effectively lets you write a small snippet of Move code with a DSL, specific language, that then will go in and do operations, read from the resources, but does this through a transaction interface. So you're actually getting one step removed from directly doing tests inside of Move itself. The other model that we're exploring is inside of Aptos repo, we have this framework called Move End-to-End Test Suite. And so this actually lets you write very complex Rust-based tests that wrap around the Aptos VM, which is the container that holds in Move. And you can actually talk to Move in much more complex, comprehensive fashions. Again, this is very similar to the transactional testing, but much more programmable. That one so the first one we probably can integrate directly into the CLI. The second one would probably be a library so that you can then build your own Rust-based Move testing frameworks that's appropriate. And that's an answer to you, but there's also a question, the Typeform.
If I wanted to create my own token standard, sorry, my own token standard, can I fork the default token module and create my own standard with custom functions?
Yeah, so the big caveat here is if you're using a different struct type, then you're going to lose the ability to interchange with existing contracts out there, resources, modules, what have you not. And so that's the only caveat. Now, the reality is, if you're just using the exact same contracts, we just literally copy over and specify that instead of using the contracts, the default contracts token struct, it'd be using your contracts token struct. So there's a lot of good portability in the space for very low cost.
And someone's asking a question about if they wanted to try to implement a number to string function, where would they potentially start and take a look? So is there a good move function with native or other functions, or a good move module that we have in our send library they could take a look at for an example of a simple native function?
So this would not be a native function. My suspicion is you could look at existing libraries that do various integer formats to strings, and from that you could, or even I guess different string representations of that, and then say, okay, I'm going to implement this directly in Move itself. Then you can also implement a couple of Move unit tests to validate that you've done it correctly. And so I think this would be actually a pretty fun way to learn Move.
Yeah, but I would only do the minimal thing here that you need right now, because eventually we need to have those functions natively, efficiently also for gas usage and so on implemented in standard library. That even goes upwards to the Move standard library. It's not Aptos, it's a generic basic Move library, standard library where this stuff belongs.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a PR from you, Zenny.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Here's another question about upgradability. So just an immutability of modules. No? So just to repeat what I said, I think today everything is immutable, but this will change. So we will make modules mutable, but only under particular conditions. No? So there is a mechanical check which you can do on the bytecode whether if you upgrade a module, it is compatible both in the terms of the transactions, which can be called, and the public functions which are available for other modules, as in terms of the memory representation of resources. Because indeed, you can't add a field to a resource and then just upgrade the modules, and that module wouldn't be able to read the old resource any longer. So this are kind of compatibility conditions. Under these conditions, you can upgrade a module in the future, which I think is a relative new thing.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I think those are all of the questions. Someone asked one sale. We are not having a sale. We've not announced a sale at any point in time. If we ever do, we will definitely do it in official channels. But we are not. So if anyone contacts you about a sale or whitelist or anything else, it is definitely a scam. Please be careful. Don't get scammed. And so the follow-up question on upgradability. So modules can be upgraded, but not with breaking changes.
Yeah. So like I said, they can be upgraded, but no breaking changes. I'm sorry, I have not yet a Twitch account. Otherwise, I would have just answered that there. So I can only answer here via microphone. But yes, you're totally right, Paul.
And also thank you, Kevin, who has been hopping in, even though he's not here, he is hopping in and answering questions via text. And Kevin is also a great resource for all things related to Move. He's been writing a lot of the core contracts that power staking, power IRONGREY, etc. So thank you, Kevin. We are at the end, and it does seem like there are no new questions. So unless someone wants to drop a question in real quick in the middle of what I'm saying right now, I think we can conclude. I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you, everybody, for joining Move Monday. We'll be here again, same time next week. Good night to you, Bitco Earn, and everyone else who stayed up late in their time zone. There will be a phase 3 for incentivized testnets. And with that, have a great week, everybody. And yes, Morgan, I hope we can get you a hoodie one day as well. Bye, everybody.
I want a cookie too.
Right?
Yes.